So hello guys, I am back and this is part 2 of 36 weeks why hospitals should be your backup plan, C-sections, and why black women are dying at a higher rate than any other race. So now we're going to move on to C-sections, and I'm going to just talk about the procedures and what you actually go through. I just want to put my disclaimer up there. If you had a C-section, God bless you. If you still want to go get one, God bless you. Do what you want. This is just for educational purposes, and this is not to make women feel bad about having a C-section. I don't look down on women. I've seen little arguments like this on social media where, one woman said, "Oh, I'm glad I didn't have a C-section," and I agreed. I was like, "Oh, I'm glad I didn't have one too." And then other women come on, "Well, you make me, C-section women should feel included too." Nobody's disincluding you. Don't take it like that. No, I'm not disincluding nobody, but I feel like you need to know all the information before going in and having one. So it's not to make women feel bad. It's just at one point we didn't know. I didn't know what I know now. So don't take it like that. If you have one and you survive, you are blessed. I know a lady that had 5, and I told her that you are blessed to still be here by the grace of God, finding out the information that I know, that some women wasn't so lucky and they died. So I just want to give the breakdown of C-sections. So I'm on Wikipedia, and I know Wikipedia don't give always good information, but it's good enough. So what I did, I went and bought this book that this doctor wrote about his wife, and it's called C-sections Beyond the Scar. I'll put it in my little pennant if you want to go read it. And he said, examine cesarean, the business, the risk, and the facts, and how chiropractic may help prevent one. Curtis Reynolds, DC. So his book has some good information, but I'm going to start off reading here. All right. It says, cesarean section is also known as a C-section or a C-section or cesarean delivery. It is a surgical procedure by which one or more babies are delivered through an incision of a mother's abdomen, often performed because vaginal rib delivery would put the baby or mother at risk. Reason for operation include obstructed labor, twin pregnancy, high blood pressure in the mother, breech birth, shoulder presentation, and problems with the placenta or the umbilical cord. A cesarean delivery may be performed based on the shape of a mother's pelvis or history of a previous C-section. A trial of vaginal birth after C-sections may be possible. The World Health Organization recommends that cesareans should be performed only when medically necessary. It says a C-section typically takes to 45 minutes to an hour. You see that? It can be done with a spinal block where a woman is awake or under general anesthesia. A urinary catheter is used to drain the bladder, and the skin, the abdomen, is cleaned with an antiseptic. An incision of about 15 centimeters, 6 inches, is typically made through the mother's lower abdomen. The uterus is then opened with a second incision, and the baby is delivered. And the incision are then stitched closed. Women can typically begin breastfeeding as soon as she is out of the operating room and awake. Often several days are required in the hospital to recover sufficiently to return home. C-sections result in a small overall increase in poor outcomes and low risk pregnancies. They also typically take longer to heal from, for about 6 weeks, than vaginal birth. The increased risk includes breathing problems in the baby. I've seen that on the documentary. He breaks down how the baby, it has the baby breathing wrong, which is an amniotic fluid embolism. I actually researched 2 women that died from amniotic fluid embolism and postpartum bleeding in the mother. And amniotic fluid embolism is when the amniotic fluid that's in the sac of the baby can get in your bloodstream. And it's a reason why the good Lord made the baby in the sac separated. The baby is actually separated from the mother's blood, and the baby's making his own blood. So it's in that little sac. And so when they go in and have a C-section, and if any of that amniotic fluid leaks over into our veins and our bloodline, it can kill you. I've researched 2 stories of ladies that died of amniotic fluid embolism and postpartum bleeding in the mother. And that postpartum bleeding in the mother, I actually seen, that was Carol's Dixon Johnson story, where after she had a C-section, she just internally bled in and out, and that's what caused her to pass. Established guidelines recommend that C-section should not be used before 39 weeks without a medical reason. The method delivery does not appear to have an effect on the subsequent sexual function. In 2012, about 23 million C-sections were done globally. The international healthcare community has previously considered the rate of 10% and 15% of ideal for cesarean sections. Some evidence find higher rate of 19% may result of better outcomes. More than 45 countries have globally have C-sections less than 7.5 or 6, while more than 50 have rates greater than 27%. Efforts are being made to both improve access and reduce the use of C-sections. I don't believe that. In the United States, as of 2017, there are about 32% of deliveries are by C-section. The surgery has been performed at least far back as 715 BC, following the death of the mother, which baby is occasionally surviving. Descriptions of mothers surviving date back to 1500 AD, with early attest to ancient times. The apocryphal account of Julius Caesar's birth in about 100 BC by cesarean is commonly stated in the origin of the term. With the introduction of antiseptics and anesthesias in the 19th century, survival of both baby and mother, and thus the procedure, has significantly become more common. So a lot of that stuff in there I don't agree with. Like Wikipedia was saying, if you having problems vaginally. Now I've heard a lady tell a story that she went into labor with her baby laying transverse lie, and when it was time to have the baby was not turned. And so of course you have a C-section, but if they're saying on here that something wrong with your vagina, if your pelvic ain't wide enough, I just don't believe that. Why, with C-sections, like they said, it take like 45 minutes to an hour. And in a hospital, you still got to remember it's a business. And if you're not meeting that business quota, they're going to push you any way possible to have a vaginal. They're going to push you to have a C-section. If you're not, that's their goal, to get you in and out. And it actually, I think C-sections cost more than vaginal births. No, I think the C-sections, what I said on the thing, I think the C-sections are cheaper. And it gets people out, gets people out of the hospital quicker. With vaginal birth, you have to wait on the body to do what it needs to do. So the doctor goal is to push you into labor as far as possible. If it takes medicine and the medicine don't work, and then the medicine affecting the baby, with all these interventions, then they're going to push you to a C-section. So we have to remember, this is not a place of care. This is a place of business, because every single thing that the hospital uses, from the C-section to the medicine to the doctor to the nurses to the cup you pee in to the pads you use, the diapers they get, everything has a price on it. So it's a business. It's advertised like, oh, we care about you. but it's a business. It's a risk going in, and it's on your insurance, whatever insurance you got. It's a business. So people need to really understand. And then also with C-sections, people don't understand, like I read here, they cut through, they're going to cut you like all the way down here at your abdomen, and it's 7 layers before they actually get to the baby. And sometimes I've heard stories where babies are cut. I've just heard some different stories, but it's 7 layers, and then they put this catheter up you, so it ain't just a cut surface and boom, you have the baby. No, it's layers of things that, okay, this computer getting on my nerves, but it's layers before you actually, I don't know all the medical terms, but I know it's 7 layers. And it takes longer to heal from. So, yes. But I want to share what Curtis Reynolds said about C-section. And when I seen it, it's like, wow, so Wikipedia didn't put this on here. He said, the technical term for C-sections is cesarean section. The name comes from the Latin word caesare, which means to cut. Some historians believe that Julius Caesar was the first to be born that way, but most agree that the term was used before his birth. Throughout most of the history, C-sections was used when the mother was clearly dead or already dying. C-sections were used in animals and humans for a very long time, documented back 600 years ago, though it was a case of an emergency. Okay, did you hear that? So C-sections were intentionally used when the mother was dead or already dying. So y'all know I'm a believer. So there's a spirit behind everything that we do. So the first intention for C-sections was death or somebody dying. So, and then you wonder why women are dying behind C-sections. So I'm going spiritual here. So that's the original intent of it. If you already dead, they cutting the baby to get the baby out. So that's the original foundation of C-sections. And I'm going to read this here. It says, C-sections were never meant to be used with any regularity. They were intended to be used for emergencies only. According to the World Health Organization, which I think I read this, C-section should occur 10 to 15% of the time. Yet here in the United States, the rate is closer to 31%. According to the CDC's report on C-section rates, the rates have increased dramatically over decades. Overall, cesarean delivery rate in the United States has increased from 60% from 1996 through 2009 from 20.7% to 32.9%. And he says here, the actual cause of the risk rise is unknown. Some studies show that it's due to increased diagnosis risk, and some of them show that quite a few women are electing to have them to avoid vaginal delivery. Regardless of the cause, the rate is simply much higher than it should be. So, women are actually going in and saying, I want to have a C-section because they don't want to deal with the pain of birth. And I seen in one of these documentaries that, I think in Aftershock, when the OBGYN took over, they misinterpret the scripture. And I think that she said in that documentary that cesareans came from, the OBGYNs, YNs, cesareans, and all these new ideas around birth came from the Catholic Church. But these men were put in place, and they misquoted the scripture where it says, deliver us from evil. And so it was misinterpreted when Eve bit the apple, that the woman was trying to get away from the curse of the pain, because the scripture clearly says that you will have childbirth. So back in the day, the white elitists, which were becoming doctors, they felt like they could deliver them from evil, get them away from the pain. So they was doing C-sections, and that's not good. So that's the history behind it. And so now today, you fast forward today, you have so many women afraid of vaginal birth. They are really afraid of vaginal, but that's the correct way to have a baby. If you're healthy, so that's the correct way. But women are so afraid these days and time, they're going in the hospital saying, look, I just really want a C-section. I just want it over with. I just want to see the baby. You get 45 minutes, it's done. I ain't got to deal with all that. And they're suffering the consequences. They are really suffering the consequences of the baby. I seen on The Business of Being Born that when a baby is born vaginally, I read in the other book, the unassisted birth book, that immediately the baby is now breathing through my umbilical cord. But once the baby come out, and it come out the correct way of the vaginal, it takes 2 to 3 seconds. The baby start breathing like this. They start breathing like us. But right now, they're not breathing like us. My baby is breathing through his umbilical cord. So it changes automatically. So when you go in and have a C-section, the baby, the risk, like it said here, can have breathing problems because it's not the proper way of giving birth to the baby. So when you're cutting it and it's not coming through the vaginal area like it's supposed to, it's different. So it causes a risk for your child and for the mom. And I've heard, when I was working at the hospital, I used to work as a CNA. I was pregnant with my first child, Zachariah, and this nurse came to me and told me, she said, well, it's best to have a C-section because if you have a C-section, your vagina, it'll stay the same. It won't shrink, and it'll be good for you and your husband or whatever. And I just looked at her. I didn't know what I know now. But the vagina is like a rubber band. It stretches. It goes back. It widens as wide as, and because of me, I done had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I done had 8 pregnancies total. 7, I delivered them. So my body is used to being pregnant. My body's used to being pregnant. My body is used to pushing out a baby. So my body is going to work with me. And now that I think back on it, I think that's so crazy. Because the vagina is like, it's going to stretch to the needs of your baby. In some cases, you have shoulder dystocia. And sometimes it happens. But majority of the time, that baby is going to come out like it's going to turn. I go back and watch Zariah's birth, and my doula did think that she was stuck there for a while. She wasn't coming back. So what Sam went in, he stretched my vagina. He had gloves on, so if you watch the video. But Dr. Murphy stretched my vagina and sort of helped Zariah maneuver on out. It was painful, but the vagina is stretchable. So these doctors make these interventions with these C-sections, so it's like a machine. It's like what you call that thing? It's like it's like being put on a conveyor belt. You're just put on that conveyor belt and you're passed through that system with the doctors. 45 minutes, cut, done, get out. 45 minutes, cut, done, get out. And so I actually had a friend of mine that shared his wife a story about having a C-section. He was like, oh my gosh, it looked like they're working on a car because they've been moving so fast. And I was like, oh my God, that's just, oh my gosh. So that is the process of C-sections and how it's done. And and it's good to know the history behind it. So they're giving the medical uses. These are the medical uses that they use for a C-section. It said complications of labor and factors increase the risk associated with vaginal delivery include breech or transverse positions. So let me check the camera because I know I can talk. Okay, I got a couple more minutes. And that's proven to be a lie because you can turn your baby before you have them. I had a breech baby, which was Sephora, my second child. My doctor turned the baby, and I had medication, but I still had her vaginally. Transverse positions. Zephaniah was transverse. He was lying straight. I took a flashlight, turned him. He came out head down. He came out head down first. Prolonged labor or failure to progress. That's also a lie. I feel like that's a lie because the body knows what to do. You got to give the woman time to go into labor. And, you know, that's why the doctors always want to intervene because they want to get it rolling. They want you in and out. They said obstructed labor, also known as dystocia, I discussed shoulder dystocia. Fetal distress. There's a reason for everything. I watched a little clip on the business of being born. Pitocin and all the medicine given to the mom to numb her body can cause the baby to go in distress. Heart rate go up, and then by the time you get there and they see that baby heart rate, the baby heart rate going up, we already got you numb, it's time for emergency C-section because we got to get that heart rate down. But it's the medicine that's making the baby heart rate go up. Cord prolapse. I don't understand what that. Let me look it up real quick. I'm trying to move forward because I don't want to move. Cord prolapse is when the umbilical cord come out of the uterus with before presenting part of the baby, and sometimes it'll be wrapped around the neck. But you got to remember with the cord thing, the babies don't breathe how we breathe now. Once it's on the outside, yes, you unwrap the cord from the baby. I learned that in my unassisted book. Uterine rupture or elevated risk thereof, uncontrolled hypertension, preeclampsia or eclampsia in the mother. Like I said, preeclampsia, eclampsia is associated with high blood pressure. If you can learn your body and catch it early, I've seen women that have preeclampsia, the first beginning of preeclampsia, and they're still choosing to have their babies at home. Why? Because they're learning how to cure themselves. Tachycardia in the mother or baby after amniotic fluid works. Now, the water breaks on the inside is not coming out. Yes, you need to go to the hospital. Placenta problems, failed labor induction. Oh, wow. Why can't you just have it naturally? Failed, like if the medicine don't take, they'll give you a C-section. Failed instrumental delivery by forceps, or forceps is not good. Or vent house, baby wing, 4,000 grams, marascrona, umbilical cord, omnix, vasoversa, I don't know all these words, mobile, including, whatever that's words. But those are some of the uses that they use for. Those are some of the excuses they have for C-section. HIV prevention with the mother with a high viral load, an outbreak of genital herpes in the third trimester, prior problems healing with the perineum, biconoma uterus, rare cases of preterm birth after death of the mother. So those are some of the medical reasons that they use the C-sections. Let me see where I'm at, y'all. All right, I'm at 24:14. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to do my second video on C-sections. So stay with me. It's probably going to be a part 4 series. And let me stop it right here. I just don't want to get too caught up in talk and miss out on something.